Hello, everyone, and welcome to Into the Stands, episode 3. So today we have a lot to talk about. We got the Damian Lillard trade. We have NFL Week 3, which consisted of both of our New York teams losing, but the Denver Broncos suffering in definitely one of the worst losses in NFL history. Um, but and then of course we'd like to end off with just a little bit of baseball since both New York teams have been eliminated and the postseason is right around the corner. But Colin McGee has a message for us.
Yes, so congratulations to Two Flaquitos, hosted by John and Lucas, for being chosen as this week's show of the week. Make sure you guys catch John and Lucas every Thursday live on YouTube on WIUR.
Love how we just get to do a promo for someone that's not us.
Absolutely.
I've never done that before, actually, guys.
A lot of great shows on this YouTube channel. Make sure you guys check them out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I'll ask the question first. We'll start with the Damian Lillard trade. I mean, me and Chris were in freaking bio class doing a bio lab when we've all found out about the trade. Colin, what's your initial reaction to the Damian Lillard trade with Damian Lillard now being called a Milwaukee Buck this season?
All right, listen, no one saw this coming because for so long the narrative was just that Damian Lillard specifically said he just wanted to go to the Miami Heat. And, personally, from a basketball standpoint, I would have loved seeing him in Miami. I feel like from a cultural fit, the Miami Heat, we saw them really just for sheer grit, determination. They were not a talented team by any stretch of the imagination, but just for coaching, through hard work, they were able to get themselves to the NBA Finals. And that was really one of the most impressive finals runs I think we'll ever see. You're looking at the second AC to ever do it behind the 1999 New York Knicks. You saw Jimmy Butler lead that team all the way. And I really feel like having Damian Lillard there too would have been a great fit because I think that Damian Lillard is a guy who's loyal to his city. He's a hard worker, a guy who you can really depend on night in and night out. I think he would have been great in Miami. But listen, I can't stress enough how much this is a home run for the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks, they were just in the news the past couple of weeks because it was looking like Giannis Antetokounmpo possibly could want out because even though they won the championship in 2021, a championship where Giannis really was phenomenal in that final series. I still have vivid memories of him dropping 50 points in that series clinching Game 6 against the Phoenix Suns. But, still, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, still two very good players he was able to surround himself with. But still the concern was whether or not the star power was there to help them going forward. Because outside of that one championship year, there was a lot of playoff disappointments. I remember 2019 against the Raptors, they were up 2-0, ended up losing 4 games in a row. Raptors went on to the finals, won the championship. I remember them in the bubble losing in the second round to the Miami Heat. The year the Heat went into the finals against the Lakers in the bubble. I remember them losing to the Celtics in 2022 in the Eastern Conference Finals. And, of course, they lost to that Miami Heat team last year, getting pretty much run off the floor in that first round series, which, kind of really said a lot about the Miami Heat, but I feel like also said a ton about the Milwaukee Bucks. That core was not looking like it was going to win you any more championships. So what did they do? They went out and made a massive trade getting Damian Lillard. I love this fit. And the reason why is because I think that Damian Lillard gives something that Milwaukee desperately needed, and that is a fourth quarter finisher. Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think that there's a debate. Obviously not, give the title to Nikola Jokic now considering the season and the run he's had. But Giannis Antetokounmpo is undoubtedly one of the at least three best players in basketball. He's a guy who can really do everything in and out on the court. But the biggest knock on him was that he wasn't able to finish games. For a guy that being that size, most of his skill set mostly is driving to the basket, his interior game. You kind of need some outside, you need some shot making, some play making in order to get you near the end of that game. And I think that Damian Lillard brings that to the table. Now, they traded away Drew Holiday, but Drew Holiday is 33 years old. He did a lot for them, really was one of those main catalysts on that championship squad. And they also traded away Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen goes to the Phoenix Suns. I like that move for the Suns. Also, the Suns got Yusuf Nurkic. Both moves, I think, is very good for Phoenix because, listen, they already have their big three: Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. I think that those guys are obviously going to carry the scoring load, and what you need is kind of more role players who will fit into their role. DeAndre Ayton, they traded away to the Portland Trailblazers. DeAndre Ayton, we all know the talent. The guy was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. But ultimately, he just, you couldn't really get him that much touches. With Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, a guy like DeAndre Ayton cannot get as much touches and really live up to that potential of being a number 1 overall pick. I think Nurkic slides perfectly into that role. I mean, this is a guy who averaged about 13 points, 9 rebounds last season. He'll do the dirty work, does what he needs to do. I think he slides perfectly into that Phoenix lineup. And, the big concern about the Suns last year in the playoffs, at least, was that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker were carrying most of the scoring load, but you really got no contributions from the other guys. I mean, Grayson Allen's a guy who got you 11, 10 points in Milwaukee coming off the bench. And this is a Milwaukee team that dominated in the regular season. So if Grayson Allen's there to be a key contributor to get you points night in and night out coming off the bench, that's great for the Phoenix Suns. And listen, looking at it from the Portland Trailblazers side, you had to make this trade. You couldn't keep Damian Lillard there. It seemed like more so than I think many were expecting, seeing as how Damian Lillard had that reputation of being, very team friendly. He stayed there for 11 years, was very loyal, but you had to make the trade. I don't know if that is a better package than what you could have got back from Miami, because I heard if Miami's giving you Tyler Hero, free first round picks, it's debatable. But I mean, I guess Portland still feels like they can compete. They want to get DeAndre Ayton to pair with Scoot Henderson. They also got Drew Holiday, who's looking like they're going to want to flip. They also got a first round pick unprotected in 2029, a couple pick swaps. I mean, I think that out of everyone, I think Portland obviously wins the least in this trade, at least in the short term future. We'll see how those picks pan out in the future. But obviously, Scoot Henderson is now expected to be the face of this franchise going forward. And I think he'll do just that. I think he'll do that job, filling in the massive shoes of Damian Lillard. I mean, we'll see how it plays out this season. But listen, the Milwaukee Bucks are looking like they might be the favorites to win the finals this year. And, it kind of in an era, I remember back in the 2020 era where we had LeBron James and Anthony Davis. That was the start of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. So much of these superstar duos. I mean, we have another one here, Lillard and Giannis. I think this team you're looking at, this could be a team that goes all the way in June. And maybe they'll play the Phoenix Suns. Maybe we'll see that rematch of 2021. But I'll move it over to you guys. What do you think about this trade?
Well, yeah, the Bucks needed something like this, as you mentioned, right? Of course, getting eliminated much earlier than they wanted to. As you mentioned, right? The thing with Giannis, everyone knows his talent, everyone knows how good of a basketball player this guy is. But right, the ability to close the games, right? The ability to obviously has won the finals before, but right, just ending, right, closing out games and right. The pieces that they had, right, with Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, as you mentioned, right, solid, good pieces, but right, the ability to get Damian Lillard, I think you obviously sign up for that any day of the week. For Portland, it is interesting, all right, that they are getting Drew back and they are getting DeAndre Ayton. They're gonna see what they have there. Maybe, yeah, I think if, as you mentioned, right, trading him to Miami is more for the future. The more distant future than the what they got in this trade, which is the more for the closer product that we'll see maybe next year. We're gonna see with DeAndre and Drew Holiday pairing up with as you mentioned Scoot Henderson, and they get a first round pick in there as well. So it's not an awful return for them. That's just the direction they decided to go in. Is the more the ability to be productive, the ability to contend next season. And then for Phoenix, right, further adding pieces, adding more depth to a roster that did seem pretty top heavy. We thought, or so we thought, maybe, right, eliminating or getting eliminated earlier than they wanted to, having pieces around Kevin Durant and of course Devin Booker. I think it's overall a fair trade. Of course, the star, the shiny name is Damian Lillard, and the Bucks are the ones who are going to I think reap the most benefits from this trade, at least in the near future. But I do like this trade from all sides, especially with Portland, as you mentioned, right? It was off the court. The issues were off the court. When it came to Damian Lillard, a superstar talent, we all know that. But right, with him not wanting to be there, just keeping him around obviously was not going to happen, and would have just led to more just unnecessary drama. So they did have to get themselves out of just let it just end it there, and go on and get the best return that they could to win next season.
It's an interesting situation from all sides. I mean, Milwaukee, who may needed one more piece to really put them over the top in the East. Portland, who wanted to possibly move Damian Lillard, even though he was so loyal to their club. And then Phoenix, who came out of, for me at least, came out of nowhere more and moved DeAndre Ayton, which I think in the short term, I think could be helpful since of the contract situations with cap space and all that. So looking at what Milwaukee could look like, because I went a different direction with this idea. Milwaukee's lineup is Damian Lillard, whoever you put at the two, because this is showing me something completely different than what I saw earlier. This is Pat Connaughton playing the two. I wouldn't put him there. You have Middleton, Giannis, and Lopez. That lineup is insane. I think the biggest part about this trade is now that you have another superstar on this team, the workload for Giannis can be less if desired. And granted, you will see, and I have a big feeling this will happen, the headlines being those three big players, Giannis, Lillard, Middleton, combined for 80, 90, even 100 some nights. So I'm interested to see now. And I think this trade would have been more beneficial last year because you can rest players more. Like, so you say like Giannis needed a rest for back-to-back nights. Lillard could have gone and dropped like 50 as a joke. But listen, I think Portland is I'll start with Milwaukee again. Milwaukee is in a much better position. And I think, like these guys will agree, will be the favorites in the East this year. But you look at a team like Portland, I don't know. I mean, I think they could have gotten more. I think they wanted more. But getting Drew Holiday, having that veteran presence, if they decided to keep him, having DeAndre Ayton, the semi-veteran presence, to be around Scoot Henderson, I think is somewhat the direction I would go, and not at the same time, because you want like more experience to be around your young guard to help him develop. And I think Portland did this right somewhat. They had the right intentions. I think they may, in the long term, have gotten the wrong players. And then Phoenix needed to get out of some cap situations with Ayton. And I think they get a decent return in Yusuf Nurkic. I think he'll be that center presence that they need to try to make it back in the West and maybe make it back to the NBA Finals, like you said, to possibly set up a rematch with Milwaukee. But we'll head from the hardwood to the gridiron next. And before we talk about the two teams from the Empire State, we're going to lead off with the Dolphins because, oh my. And I think that's everyone's initial reaction from this game. Colin, we'll start with you. Listen, Tua didn't throw for that many yards, but this team, man, they went nuts.
So listen, for so long, I can remember looking at the highest scores that a team has ever scored. Obviously teams scored in the 70s, back in the 1950s and the 1960s. It always feels like when I was watching football games that once a team would kind of get the 50 burger, they would kind of stop. You never really saw a team hit 60. I was even always looking just for a team to hit 60. Well, imagine the shock on my face when I checked the scores during the game during Sunday afternoon, and I see that Miami is up 70-20 on the Denver Broncos in the fourth quarter. I mean, this is an all-time performance, and it really cannot be put into that much words. They scored a touchdown on basically every single possession they had in the game. They scored 10 touchdowns. You heard that right, 10 touchdowns. Devin Achane, 203 yards from 18 carries, 4 total touchdowns. Raheem Mostert also had 4 total touchdowns. Tua Tagovailoa passed for 4 touchdowns. Even Mike White came in and got under the action with a long bomb to Chosen Anderson. This just goes to show why the Miami Dolphins are now a juggernaut. Listen, going into the season, the talk in this division was about the Buffalo Bills, obviously, because they've always been a big presence, and the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, with the Jets situation, they haven't been talked about as much as one in this division. But listen, Miami is now one of the 3 undefeated teams in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers. And after a performance like this, how can you not say they're one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl? I mean, a team that can do this. I mean, I saw other names online, call them what you want, the greatest show on surf. I saw this offense get labeled as Mike McDaniel. But listen, Tua Tagovailoa, this is a guy who people were wondering last year, could his career be over? He was having all these concussion injuries. And while I don't think he's as good of a thrower as other guys in his draft class, such as Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow, he's getting the job done. Granted, this is a great receiving core, great offensive weapons. I love Mike McDaniel as a head coach, even when he was a candidate, but working on that Kyle Shanahan offense. This team is going to be very good. Now, next week, we're going to have a big showdown with the Dolphins versus the Bills, but this is the type of performance that will open everyone's eyes. And going on the Denver Broncos side, obviously, I'm not sure what you do from here. I mean, Sean Payton was supposed to be the big hire. He gave up a first-round pick to get him. Hasn't really seen any bit of a difference, although Russell Wilson has looked a little bit better in the games compared to what he did last year. But the most alarming part is that I remember, at least last year, the reason why the Broncos lost all these games was because of their defense. Or it was because of their offense. I'm sorry, but the defense was one of the best in the league. Now that very same defense is just so highly regarded, gave up 70 points in a football game. And the Dolphins even had the chance to break the NFL record at the end of the game. I mean, they scored 70 with still 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. If they wanted to, they could have kicked the field goal.
I do have just one question. This just came on my mind now. Sorry to interrupt you. Did you like the idea that McDaniel didn't go for the record and stick
Well,
with 70?
obviously, you don't want to, you want to have good sportsmanship. You don't want to, have any bad karma go your way. Obviously, I think as fans, as long as you're not a Denver Broncos fan, you would have wanted to see them kick that field goal. You would have wanted to see history. But obviously, from the team perspective, sportsmanship, bad karma, I understand why they didn't. I mean, maybe you could have threw a Hail Mary at the end of the game to try to go for 77. But granted, 70 is pretty good. I mean, you're not going to complain about scoring 70 points in a football game ever. I believe the third or fourth highest in NFL history. I mean, what more can you really say?
I mean, yeah, you pretty much covered that. There really isn't much more to talk about with this. It's just an absolute, just unbelievable performance. And when you look at the Dolphins, really, the big thing is, can Tua stay healthy? That's going to be a big thing to watch moving forward. Because they need him. I think that's pretty clear. There are a lot of phenomenal pieces on this team. Obviously, right? Tua is not the sole reason that this team scored 70 points in this game. But his health is going to be a big concern to watch moving forward, because if he can stay healthy, this team, yeah, you might be looking at the team in the AFC, the team to come out of the AFC. They're phenomenal. Now granted, it's one game. It's crazy of a performance as it was, and I'm absolutely not trying to brush it over, but there's still obviously a lot of work to be done, right? The Bills are coming up, then they do have a showdown with the Eagles in a couple of weeks, and they play the Chiefs, and right, the Cowboys will come to town eventually. So they still have some big showdowns to come, and they have to prove it in the playoffs. But that starts. But definitely, look, I mean, all nothing but good signs. Nothing but good signs from this Miami Dolphins team. Really, I mean, all the other teams in the AFC East are just shivering when this team comes into their town. And the Jets, right? They're gonna have to take this team on twice.
The Giants have them in a week.
Right. The Giants. Obviously the Bills now. And then the Patriots already lost to them once, but they are a lot of fun to watch. Big game, it tells us a lot, but they still have a lot of work to do, and it really all starts with Tua's health and making sure that he can be there, in the long run and be here for this whole year for this team. Because if he can be here, then I think undoubtedly the favorite in the American League, in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, wow, my biggest takeaway was the emergence of the rushing attack for Miami. And that's what, for I think the last couple of years, is what's held this team back the most, was the ground attack. This year, I mean, going to the season, they had Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, I believe, and a chain. And what you were hoping for if you were a Dolphins fan was the emergence of one of them. And what do you get in this game? Not one, but two of them. That just is concerning in itself for everyone else in the league. And I will get to point out Achane the most, because Devin Achane, the rookie, I didn't think he was going to go this crazy in a game in his rookie season. Boy, was I wrong. 18 carries for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, Raheem Mostert had 60 receiving yards. So the Dolphins' offense is ridiculous, and it's concerning as a fan of a team in the division. And what makes this even more crazy, Jalen Waddle didn't play. Imagine this team with Jalen Waddle and this offense putting up this many points the entire season. It's over. That's the one way you could put it. But I think now that everyone knows that the Dolphins are going to be legit. They're going to be one of those teams that are not going to want to mess around. They get the matchup with the Bills, and I think the Bills are in a much better position. Like, if you told me when the Bills lost to the Jets and the Dolphins were riding this high that the Bills, I think, could have a possibly better chance to win than Miami, yeah, you'd say to someone you're crazy. But Buffalo has won back-to-back games, and they're back to where they should be. So that Bills-Dolphins matchup will be absolutely nuts. And I think that will be the game of the week for a lot of people. But we'll head to the Empire State next, and we'll open with the Giants because they played first. Listen, I don't know what you can really say about this Giants game, Colin. What's your analysis of this?
Exactly what I expected. Listen, I talked about it on the previous show, and we were finishing up giving our Thursday night football prediction. I believe my final score is 38-17. Well, it was 30-12, basically the same thing. Yeah, I mean, when you're going up against San Francisco 49ers, a team who I believe has the best roster in the NFL, and you're missing your best offensive weapon in Saquon Barkley, and you're missing your best offensive lineman in Andrew Thomas, and a unit that already struggles, you're not very likely to win the football game. But listen, they competed at least for the first half, or at least the first quarter. It was tied 3-3. They went into the halftime down 17-6, cut it to 17-12 due to a penalty call which set the Giants up near the goal line. But listen, I mean, this is what we expected. Daniel Jones, 22 for 32, 137 yards. He had an interception, but that was probably one of the most ridiculous interceptions I've ever seen. It bounced off a couple 49ers players, a Giants player. A few of his picks this season, listen, he has 4 picks in the season. 3 of them have been off those bobbled catches by receivers. Though one pretty concerning play that I saw, at least, was near the end of the football game. We're on a 3rd down, and he overthrew Darren Waller when Darren Waller was wide open. Listen, you have to make that throw. Granted, I know you're facing up against Nick Bosa and that 49ers pass. I mean, the 49ers pass rush against that Giants O-line is probably the worst match you could ever imagine, especially when that O-line is missing Andrew Thomas. But I mean, I can't really say that much about this game other than it was expected. But this game coming up on Monday Night Football against the Seattle Seahawks, I cannot stress how important this is. Listen, I know the Giants are awful on primetime. I know this is a game we're probably not going to win because, listen, the Giants usually don't win these football games. They don't win games where they really have to. They have their backs against the wall on primetime against a very good team. This is the game where you simply have to win. We'll see if Andrew Thomas comes back. We'll see if Saquon Barkley comes back. But, I mean, one thing I'll say is I like Micah McFadden. I think Micah McFadden looked good out there against the 49ers. I heard his name a lot, made a lot of good plays in the open field. But outside of that, I can't really say anything about that game other than, that's what we expected.
My big thing heading into the game, obviously, don't need to talk about what we thought was going to happen. We all thought the 49ers were going to win. We all knew the 49ers were going to win. The 49ers won this game before the kickoff, right? You knew the 49ers were going to win this football game, and it was probably going to be by a decent, at least 14 points. It was not going to be this was not going to be a close contest. It was at the very least, I mean, that's generous. That's generous, right? We were looking, right? I changed my score. I added another touchdown and gave them, I think I said 35-14, right? So I mean, we all knew this was going to be a tough loss, or an easy win for the 49ers. But the only point I made, right, and it wasn't really necessarily hope for the Giants. But the one point I made was that the Giants needed to at least put some points on the board and at least show that they can play with this team. And I don't know if they can. Because, they started off well, right? The first drive, only allowing the field goal and, getting out of I was saying to you guys, right, at the end of the first quarter, at the end of the first half, actually, it could be worse. It could be a lot worse, but that's not saying much. I mean, that it ends up, right, the final score is not what you want. That doesn't matter at the end of the day, right? Of course, you lose the game, but even more so that you're not I wouldn't say gave up at the end, but you let the game get away from you. And I would have liked to see a little bit more fight, but they put up 12. I mean, I guess I wasn't expecting that. And whatever, right? I think, again, this was a game we were going to brush over as a loss anyway, heading into the season, I think. But yeah, Monday night is the season. Monday night is the season. Again, we're saying this every week, but Monday night is the season because I don't need to even say why, right? The games that they have afterward, after Monday night, the Seahawks are a really good team. Not the best team they're going to play, definitely not, but a very good team and a team that they will most likely lose to. The Giants will probably lose this football game. And it's just everything, and it's tough because with the expectations heading into this year and where we expect this team, how we expected this team to progress, that we can brush over a Monday night football game at home against the Seahawks. And I wouldn't say a brush over, but more like just that this isn't a good matchup for the Giants. This isn't a very good matchup. But I mean, I'll just lay it out, right? The Giants have to prove something here. They have to prove something, because if they don't win or at least look competitive or make it close or whatever, then they just didn't deserve to be here. And maybe last year was a fluke.
Listen, Chris, I kind of want to go off what you were saying, talking about the expectations and trying to catch up. Because like I said on the first show, the final 4 teams in the NFC last year were the Eagles, 49ers, Cowboys, and then the Giants. It's become so clear for watching these first 3 games. The Giants are not on the same level as those 3 teams. And listen, that was the point of the offseason, wasn't it? The point was to try to catch up to the Dallases, the Philadelphia, San Francisco. Obviously, like I said, the roster wasn't that talented last year, but how they performed, you'd hope they'd make it more competitive. You'd hope you wouldn't get blown out by 40 in your own building to Dallas. You'd hope you wouldn't lose by 18 to San Francisco, although you could say, yeah, you had it close in the game, but they obviously showed why they're the better football team. I mean, who only knows what's going to happen when we play Philadelphia? I mean, I know Christmas Day in Philadelphia, that's the first time we see them. That game, I can guarantee you, if nothing changes, that's going to be another bad loss. So I need to see a change. I need to see a direction. Seattle's a good starting point because, look, this is a playoff team last year. Like Chris was saying, it's a must win. Just win the game.
I hope the Giants are out by Christmas so that I can enjoy Christmas. But yeah, it's just, you look at a lot of the games last year, and I'll really quickly, we'll move to the Jets. But I went back and I looked at the schedule. The games that jump out at me are the one on 9/11, right? Though the first game, the 2-point conversion. Then there was the stop at the 1-yard line against Jacksonville, and then there's the win at Washington, and then the win on New Year's Day against Indianapolis. But then there was the one I remember against Baltimore. The game against Baltimore, right? That was a big win.
Did you guys beat Baltimore last year?
Yes.
Yeah,
you came back down by 10-14 in the fourth quarter.
I forgot who they played.
I forgot about
the win in London against Green Bay.
Those are games that we never won.
Right.
Like the Giants never. I've been watching this team for many years. The Giants never won those football games, but it was different last year.
So because I've been kind of playing along this narrative that and I think it's starting to become more apparent that last year was a fluke because you point out those games, but then you do look at those games like the London and the Ravens game, and you think it's tough.
Or what if the reason we won that much last year is because we only had one primetime game?
Maybe, but and then in which case, right? Then.
Turn off the lights.
You don't have the right guys, and right. The point is, right. This season, I hate to look at it this way, but at this point, right, I'm not expecting anything, right, like I do with the Yankees, kind of, right, where we expect them to be. I'm just letting them do what they do, and we watch, and then we analyze at the end of it, because that's all you can do. I really don't know what this team is.
Well, I think you guys have talked enough about the blue and white, but the green and white had an even weirder game on Sunday, and we'll head to them next. And I'll start with them, and afterwards you have maybe quickly you guys comment.
Is it really that weird?
Yes, and
it was pretty expected.
The reason I call it weird was New England kept the Jets themselves in the game because New England couldn't score. Watching that game at my house back home, I kept questioning how New England wasn't up by 20. Because the Jets could not move the ball down the field. And Zach Wilson looked good on, I'm going to call him on 2 drives. Some say 1, I'll put him at 2. It was the one when they scored and the drive afterwards when there was like multiple drop catches by Lazard, Cobb. I think actually there was one overthrow to Garrett Wilson. And Zach Wilson's stats will not go crazy for you. The problem I have is how incompetent the team is. And this is good. Listen, Zach had a bad game. You can say that. The reaction, though, is what caught more headlines, I think, which is the issue. I loved watching this team, even if the offense sucks. But it's difficult to root for them when there's this much incompetence on the sidelines. You guys argue on the sidelines? This is not a team. You expected yourselves to be competitive? You're arguing with each other, with your own coaches on the sidelines? How can you call yourselves competitive if stuff like that happens? I'm going to say this right now. The Jets, if Rodgers was on this team, you could say all those arguments. This is not a playoff contender. This is a team that looks right now in the state they're in, unless they make a statement on Sunday, a team that will have a top 5, that would have a top 7 draft pick this year, and would be looking at possibly moving up.
Yeah.
And listen, I've been praising Zach Wilson for over a year now. First of all, what Joe Namath said is hilarious, and I think
I was gonna get to that. Trust me.
Oh yeah, no, I listen. I was like in shock. I was mad. Now all you can do now is laugh at it, because you look back at the tape. It's somewhat similar. I've seen this with other quarterbacks before. Not getting rid of the ball in the pocket, not wanting to move around. Now, granted, the Patriots scheming is off the charts. That's what you could say about them. I'm characterizing them low here because I don't like the Patriots. But at the same time, they knew what they were doing, and they game planned very well. I'm going to just end it on this. You could say fire the coaching staff. Maybe we need to fire who was ever running the mental stability of this football team and get them to play more like an actual team and not just 53 men on the roster. Play like an actual football team. Because you would have, even if your quarterback was still bad, like I'll put an example here. When the Jets had Bryce Petty in 2019-ish, the guys are still around the freaking quarterback. I don't care if it's a third string or not. It's the same thing here with Zach. The only way you're going to win football games, especially if you're a team like the Jets, is if you rally around your quarterback. If this team doesn't change that, no matter who they have under center, this team must go by the wayside and should be thrown into the Hudson River.
But listen,
any of you guys got quick thoughts on this?
Maybe the problem is that Zach Wilson isn't a leader. Maybe he's not a guy who can lead a franchise. And listen, I want to go over the Joe Namath tweets. I mean, Joe Namath, we can all agree, greatest quarterback in Jets history, tweeted, wrong direction, Zach. Step up into that pocket. Then he also tweets,
he should be the offensive coordinator.
I'm starting to wonder if Zach's playing like he's being coached. He's making choices that are not intuitive to the quarterback position. Granted, this is a guy who's a legend for the Jets, actively trashing the starting quarterback. Like I said, for an example, this is basically if Eli Manning went on Twitter to trash Daniel Jones' performances. This is unheard of. I mean, and listen, it has good reason to, because I'm not going to count the touchdown that you scored against the Bills to win the game because that was a special teams touchdown. The offense led by Zach Wilson this season is averaging 12 points a game. That is unacceptable no matter what way you slice it. And this is a pretty good offense. Listen, I know the O-line's a problem, but you have Michael Carter, you have Breece Hall, you have Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver core. Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook,
by the way, has more fumbles than most teams.
No matter what, this offense should never average 12 points a game. That is the worst possible case scenario for this team.
Want to hear more crazier stat? Jets have scored the second fewest points by any team this season.
Now, I'm going to throw something out here right now.
Last or second?
Listen, there's rumors the Jets players are mad about Robert Saleh defending Zach Wilson. We started to see him start to push back on it this week in the press conference. We saw them sign Trevor Siemian. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think that if the Jets get blown out by the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, they have another performance, they score like 10, 15 points, I think Zach Wilson's gone. I don't think he's a starter after next week. I'm going to say that right now because, listen, on a national stage, Taylor Swift's going to be there in attendance. There's going to be a lot of people
playing Taylor Swift.
Going to be a lot of people in the stands. The whole nation. It's going to be the
is.
Jets Sunday Night Football game first Sunday Night Football game for the Jets in how long?
I have no idea.
Exactly. They never get a Sunday Night Football game. They're going to have exposure unlike they've ever had. And if Zach Wilson lays another dud, I think that's it for him. And listen, I want to pull up some stats here because you think about who was one of the biggest draft busts ever, right?
Oh, yeah.
Jamarcus Russell. I want to read you some stats here.
There's one that have worse.
Listen, Zach Wilson's career stats: 4,489 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 22 interceptions, a 69.2 quarterback rating. Jamarcus Russell's career stats: 4,083 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, 23 picks, and a 65.2 quarterback rating. This is the exact same quarterback right now. And listen, I kind of feel bad for Zach Wilson. Listen, playing in the New York market, it's tough. But if you're not that guy and the team does not rally behind you, which clearly the Jets do not, you have to move on. I know it's tough, especially for Jets fans. This is a guy who they drafted second overall, a guy who they pictured being the future face of their franchise. But even if Joe Namath says enough is enough, I think enough is enough.
Yeah, it's a weird perspective on it. And
I wouldn't say it's a weird perspective.
No. Because this is where I'm going to go with this. The question, remember when the stuff came out about Hackett from Denver? Do you think it's possible that the same things could be happening here?
Absolutely. But Zach Wilson has not given you any evidence in the past.
It's like watching Russell Wilson from last year.
Okay,
but like a much worse version of Russell Wilson from last year.
But the
Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson.
No,
exactly.
but like, I'm trying to go.
The problem with blaming Hackett is that Zach Wilson never gave you any evidence outside in the film Hackett to prove that it's not his fault. That's the problem. So I think both of them are at play here. Listen, I do, but I think both of them have to go.
Fair enough. I'm not. Listen, if Vic Hill is wrong, I think pointing Kansas City as the breaking point is harsh because it's Kansas City.
Well, listen, I think Robert Saleh's job might be on the line here. And
no,
listen,
I agree with that.
I think that Robert Saleh, he's a defensive guy. Obviously, he's not as in tune with the offense. I think he's ultimately going to put his foot down and say, listen, I'm not going to lose football games just because of the guy I have under center.
And I think I think if there's anyone to keep from this whole organization right now, listen, if there's one person who I would personally want to keep, if you fire Douglas, it just proves this organization's incompetent. Because Joe Douglas built this God squad, a semi-God squad with a lingering hole at quarterback now, you could say. Like, if he built this, it's lack of execution. And I think I love Robert Saleh. He provides brings a lot to the table. But my problem here will be, I hate saying this, if you can't get the job done, go back to being a defensive coordinator. I think you have to do it, because if you can't not rally this team with how much talent they have, I think his job will be on the line. Listen, Ulbrich, I think.
Well, listen, they held New England to 15 points. The offense going to score 16 points to win the football game. With that talented of an offense, you should be able to score 16 points.
Listen, Hackett should get canned. If the Jets have any logic, he will get sacked, and he deservingly sacked. Listen, I wouldn't even be mad if he got fired by week 6. I'm dead serious. I would not even be mad. It would just prove instant regret, which would be the only negative that Douglas has had other than drafting Wilson in the first place.
You know, what you were saying about how the Jets acted on the sidelines and not backing up their guy. What I will say is, right, some of these guys have handled the media very well when it comes to Zach.
The media, yes.
Garrett
in the
Wilson,
game.
What Garrett Wilson is saying to, Hahn, right? Barton Hahn. Right?
Yes.
Coming on that show every week and consistently backing up Zach Wilson.
That I respect.
I mean, I'm just saying it's like, like Colin said, right? To what extent does the blame finally go on him?
I think the blame
I mean,
should go more on him now.
It should have gone on him a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's the reason why Aaron Rodgers is in a Jets uniform in the first place.
Right?
Exactly.
And Rodgers, I can understand, right, defending him, and Rodgers, right, right. I feel like this week the media has been all over the Jets because it was Joe Namath who went on the Michael Kay show and had that long interview with Michael Kay and Donald Greca, and in which he revealed, as we were highlighted, just a lot of anger towards what the Jets have done and what's mostly on Zach Wilson. And right, the question was asked, right, what if you could talk to Zach, because that's another thing is that the Jets have not had Joe Namath, and I was not aware of this. They have not had Joe Namath actually talk to Zach Wilson ever. Apparently, the two have never met and talked.
I mean, that's a weird one,
and that's why Joe Namath comes out and says the things he does, is because he's not really involved with the organization.
Do you think he should be though?
I don't know. I'm not going to say front office or a coach or whatever, but the guy doesn't even come to the stadium to talk to the quarterback is a little iffy to me. But not so much. I think the organization's got bigger problems than that. Having Joe Namath be involved, they got bigger problems with the team right now. But the question was asked, right? If you were to talk to Zach, what would you say to him? Just any advice? And his response would be, send him to Kansas City to back up Mahomes. That's the only thing he could say about Zach Wilson. He had nothing else to say. It's insane. And so I mean, look, I don't think it's ideal. You'd love to see a united clubhouse, but to what extent does the blame go on? Right. Finally, it's just, how much more do we need to see? And honestly, I like Sal a lot too. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a good leader from how he handles the media and what we hear from him. But he's also defending Zach. I mean, he's got to, but not even.
But like I was saying, Chris, you started to see even this week, he's starting to go back on it, saying he's at fault here partially. He's starting to realize you can't keep on just blindly following him.
He's got to do that, because enough's got to. When is enough going to be enough? We've been saying this for weeks. It's like, I mean, when is it going to be over? And the thing is, because if they are to replace him, right, this is not to say that everything's going to be, sunshine for the Jets and everything is going to get better. I think the worst, really, the fact that this game against the Chiefs is kind of going to be viewed as the dagger. I said it last week, and I think it still is true. I think that was the dagger, the game against New England.
I agree.
I think just that rainy day and not being able to muster anything, and right, just all the drama that goes on, and just it's just weeks. It's been weeks now that we've been talking about the fact that it's just not going to work with Zach. This experiment that they're trying to make work, it's not going to work, and we are starting to see people actually turn on Zach, but it's I hate to say it, but about time. It's about time. I mean, and so Salah's really got to hold him more accountable, and the fact that he's showing signs of doing that is big.
It's an improvement.
He's talking about his own legacy here, Robert Saleh, and I think he is I like what I see. Right, I know, as we were talking about, right, just how evident it is that the league is going more in the direction of offensive-minded coaches, but I like how Saleh handles the media, and I think when you see the way a coach handles the media, I think that can reflect in the way that they coach their team, and I think he's a good leader. But I think it's about time that he starts, thinking about his own legacy and understanding that they need to get better results from the quarterback position.
So, quick one word or 2 word answers here. What team, if there is any team, you could say none, would Zach Wilson be like? Who do you think could actually, if there's any team in the league right now, is there any team do you think that could turn Zach Wilson's career around?
I mean, like Chris was saying, it has to be a backup role. It has to be someone where he sits behind a quarterback, maybe gets in a perfect situation like Kansas City, and then maybe that would happen. But I mean, it's going to be tough. Listen, I don't really know what to say. I mean, he's shown enough to the point now where I'm not sure what you can really do.
That's the short answer. But even then, he's not going to play there. He's not. I mean,
I don't think he'll ever be a starter again.
Right.
Like,
I think there's the team that came to my mind first, other than San Francisco, was Green Bay. And the reason I said Green Bay was what Love did behind Rodgers, and now he's producing it on the field, is nothing. It's fantastic. And Green Bay is getting their next big quarterback thing now. But I think working under the right LaFleur, because remember he was under the LaFleur's brother, that didn't go very well. I think working under Mike LaFleur, I think could turn Zach Wilson's career around. But we're running low on time, so we're gonna look at quickly for about the next couple of minutes about the NFL, because there was some games that I'll ask this question. Was there a team for you that made a statement this week, or a player that made a statement for you this week? I'm going to go first because I already know mine instantly. It's the Houston Texans. If it's other than the Dolphins, it's the Houston Texans. And I don't think there's a team that could dispute this. Maybe the Chargers because they've actually won a game. But the Houston Texans would absolutely be bonkers again. Like the Houston Texans, if they had any form of a defense, could be 2-1. Just embrace that fact real quick. If they had any form of a defense, they're 2-1. And it's led by finally a number 2 pick turning out well in CJ Stroud. And I think CJ Stroud, listen, I bet a lot of people have questions about like the IQ and stuff from the NFL draft. He's proving all those people wrong so far. It's over 280 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. I mean, the ground game, not very good. Damian Pierce has been very disappointing to start the season. But you're seeing the reemergence of Robert Woods, Tank Dell. The Houston Texans offense looks pretty solid, and I think they could be maybe make some noise in the AFC South this year. So my team that impressed me the most is the Houston Texans. Colin, real quick, who is your team that impressed you the most this week?
The obvious answer is the Miami Dolphins because, listen, we were just talking about it back there. I mean, that is a statement of wins you could ever have. But I'm going for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, if you do remember, the guy to the left of me, Robbie Basil, said that Giants win was the most undeserving win he's ever seen coming back against the Arizona Cardinals. Well, that Arizona Cardinals team went out and beat the Dallas Cowboys.
They deserve to win that game.
So I need to ask you, Robbie, was that Giants win still undeserved?
So it's a great question, by the way. I'm going to say someone.
No, it wasn't. Because they proved to you they can beat good competition. Listen, the Arizona Cardinals are a better football team than many people are giving them credit for. Listen, Josh Dobbs, he's doing a good job there.
The difference
Dallas rarely was overmatched by them. Listen, like they controlled the football game. They learned from their mistakes against the Giants. They're able to hold out a lead against the Dallas Cowboys. Many people were expecting the Arizona Cardinals to be the worst team in football, get a number 1 overall pick. Maybe they're a lot better than I was not a big Jonathan Gannon believer. I don't know how he's going to pan out as a head coach. But this football team looks like they're playing for them. And I like what I've seen so far. Listen, that's a big win against the Cowboys. Arizona Cardinals are a lot better than a lot of people think.
I mean, the reason I say somewhat was the way they blew the lead and the way they were not able to play defense felt like you were just intentionally trying to lose. So I think the Giants, with the way the momentum they got from Dable going and calling plays, I think that's what changed them the most. Now the Cowboys, I think, and this is the moment where I thought that could have happened a week ago. Now we're seeing that coming back down to earth moment from Dallas. Since, listen, Mike McCarthy's play calling, I don't know. I'm skeptical on it still. I think a lot of people are even more skeptical after this performance against the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to still say this is harsh because the Giants, the Giants went undeserved? Was the Giants went undeserving? I'm going to say somewhat. I'm going to stick it as somewhat. I'm going to keep from an unbiased perspective.
Robbie, this is not the worst team in the NFL. They proved it to you there by being the Dallas Cowboys.
So who is the worst team in the NFL to you then?
Chicago.
Chicago.
You're putting the Bears?
Obviously, they've been by far the most dysfunctional team in the league.
I mean,
just shade is obviously Chicago.
You're going with the Bears, all right?
I mean, it's obviously the Bears is like. I mean, every day when I'm driving to school, I'm listening to Mike Greenberg, and he's a New York guy. He's a Jets fan, but his wife's from Chicago. He spent a lot of time. He talks about this all the time. He is ripping the Bears every single day. It's just and I mean, I don't need him to tell me how bad they are. Just look at what they're doing week after week. They are. That is a real.
I mean, we're talking about FBI raids going on with this team.
I forgot.
I mean, look at Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota's 0-3 as well. But we'll head now, unless you had a team to watch out for. I'm sorry to interrupt you on there.
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, we go to Arizona. I mean, that I almost forgot about that, right? Because that makes me feel a little better about the Giants. But I'm gonna go with Seattle again. I feel like this is week 3
guy in Seattle. It's like you and the Cubs.
No, I mean, no, not at all.
Seattle's a good football team.
I mean, they're winning. They're winning, and they're gonna be 3-1. You figure.
I love pessimism.
In a couple of days. I mean, a 37-27 win. I mean, this is another performance putting over 30 points. In a game in which the Panthers not a good team, right? And right, Dalton was playing for them, quarterback, right?
He looked all right,
right?
He looked all right,
exactly. But that's. I feel like that's been the theme with a couple of these games with the Seahawks has been right. They're kind of you're seeing good performances, offensive performances from their opponent, but they're somehow just still outmatching them. And they are only 2-1, right? It's this week and last week really, but I mean it's just. They're proving a lot. They're proving it now. I mean, a team that in the midst of all these other teams in the NFC and just all over the NFL in general, right? Of teams that are, doing right, surprising people and putting up great offensive performances and whatnot, and teams being favorites in the playoffs or in their respective, conferences. I think the Seahawks are definitely proving a lot. Well, I like what I'm seeing.
We'll quickly head over to baseball, and I feel like it's only right, being in New York, both New York teams now being eliminated. I feel like it's only right for, I mean, either of you guys, if you want to talk about the Yankees, to quickly talk about the Yankees before we head into our quick prediction, because like I said, there's 4 games remaining in the playoff before the playoffs this year. I quickly want to get your take for who do you think will be the last wild card spot in both the American League and National League. But we'll start with Colin.
Actually, I want Chris to take it away. This is all Chris Gambino right here. New York Yankees.
I don't know about today. I maybe we'll do after the season.
You're not feeling it today?
You're not feeling it?
Well, yeah, we're running down on time, right?
Look,
I wasn't, even if when I was gonna do this rant, I wasn't like last year because that was reactionary to the postseason loss, right? But I think that when I say rant, it might just be like a couple minutes. So you just run down what happened throughout the season because they have been eliminated. They aren't going to the playoffs, and for the first time since 2016, we're gonna have a lot of time to dissect the team, go into what went wrong, what went right, the few things that went right, who should go, who should stay on the roster, and in the front office. But I mean, I guess to start there, right, when it comes to the front office, we recently got the notification, the news that Hal Steinbrenner is hiring a third party to audit the I guess just the way things are done. What I take that as most people are, is an audit of the analytics department, because that's definitely been brought into question, right? The Yankees are a very analytic organization, as most teams are, right? It seems like amongst fans, the anger has kind of gone to the analytics for some reason. Every team uses analytics, right? Every team uses analytics. That's not the problem. And again, right, not gonna go into too much detail about what I think should be done, the changes that should be made. But I guess, right, that was the big news we saw, is that Hal Steinbrenner is not happy at all, as he shouldn't be, and that he wants things to change. A lot of people involved with baseball think there are going to be a lot of things that change in the way the Yankees run business. And Hal Steinbrenner pointed out the trades of Joey Gallo, Josh Donaldson, and Frankie Montas, disastrous trades that this team has made over the past couple of years, as a definite reason to do that, and major reasons why the team didn't perform this year. I mean, you look at the fact that Joey Gallo, right? Maybe you would have thought that he'd still be your left fielder. I don't think that was an excuse to not get a left fielder in this past offseason. There was no excuse, absolutely none. And how Brian Cashman used the excuse that there was budgetary constraints. What budgetary constraints? You have almost $300 million on the payroll. Again, maybe it would have been more fresh if we were doing podcasts over the summer, and talking about it, right? The emotion, the passion. I'm just tired. I'm tired of talking about this stuff already, but it is frustrating. And just how, right, they didn't have a left fielder. Frankie Montas, right, getting hurt, and that one is more like, all right, that was a trade deadline acquisition, an upgrade that you wanted to make that just didn't work out. But it's still, I mean, that was a pitcher you gave up quite a bit for, and he gave you nothing. I think you pitched like, I don't even know. I think I would say less than 10 games as a New York Yankee he pitched in. I could be definitely wrong about that, but it was a very short sample size, and it was not good. And he was hurt all the other time he was here. And I don't even need to talk about the Josh Donaldson trade any longer, because that was an entire offseason, and the trade itself didn't work. Again, all right, what I'll say is, I saw an article, which it was written by Joel Sherman, and it's been mentioned a lot, is that Joel Sherman, when it comes to the analytics department, that there are, right, obviously you figure, give or take 26. That's probably, I don't know if that's the number he used, paraphrasing. Let's say 26 of the teams in Major League Baseball use analytics. Similar to how, right, there are going to be teams that have better pitching than others or better hitting than others, there are going to be teams that have better analytics crews or departments, right, than others. And when it comes to the Yankees, and really just some of the moves that have been made, right, moves that can really only be, explained through analytics that they're looking at, it hasn't worked out. This hasn't worked out. And I guess to give a sneak peek as to what my stance is on what this team should do front office wise. Listen, I've tried my best to defend Brian Cashman for years. What I will say is that the anger that goes on Brian Cashman, I think, is misplaced. A lot of people just immediately jump to the fact, he hasn't won a World Series since 2009, right? He didn't. Those weren't his teams, right? The core four, those weren't his teams. Those were Bob Watson and Stick Michaels' teams that they built, and Brian Cashman just inherited them. What I'll sit here and what I'll tell you, I believe Brian Cashman should absolutely get credit for every championship that this team has won since he's been a part of this organization, right? Even when he actually got the keys to the general manager position, he added great pieces in the late 90s. It was David Justice, right? Was one that sticks out at me. I mean, there were a couple others, right? This was a long time ago, but he added great pieces to these great teams. Roger Clemens, I believe that was his trade. 2009, adding phenomenal pieces: CC Sabathia, Mark Teixeira, AJ Burnett. Maybe not in total, he didn't have the best career, but as a Yankee, right? 2009 was a solid year. Nick Swisher was a solid piece, right? The drafting Robinson Cano, and eventually Aaron Judge. But really, where I think the problem comes in with Cashman is that this was his first chance to rebuild the team. right? After since 2016, right? Because that 2014, I'll say 2015 was the first year, because 2014 was that was Derek Jeter's last year, and that was the last of the core four pieces to leave, right? And then you can look at, right, CeCe Sabathia eventually leaving, and Brett Gardner leaving eventually, and some of these guys from 2009 moving on. But after the core four was officially gone, and the pieces that his big pieces from the championship eras were retired, this was his first full, complete rebuild of a team that did not involve any of those players from any of those championship teams. And what he said, and I think I don't remember if this was 2017 or 2018, or if and I say this because I've heard it a lot on radio shows being mentioned. I don't know if this is an exact quote from Brian Cashman, but it's definitely something he implied, was that with this Yankees team, he wanted to win championships, not just one championship. That's the phrase I always hear. Again, that probably is a quote, a direct quote from Brian Cashman, and even if it's not, that's what he tried to build. And what I take that as is he tried to build a sustainable roster. You don't have to win the World Series every year. That's not possible. You can't do it, right? But the Dodgers. I look at the Dodgers, right? They have a World Series under their belt, a World Series championship that came in 2020. A lot of people argue that wasn't real, but they beat the Braves to get there, and they beat a very good Tampa Bay team. I think that championship was deserved. Maybe not the whole season, but the Dodgers were the best team in baseball that year. I think it would have been realistic to view them as a World Series champion. So they have a championship. They made it 2 other years. But every year since then, right, it's been they choke in the playoffs. But after the season, you're not sitting there as a fan blaming the front office. You're not wondering if they're doing business the wrong way, right? You sit there and you say, after last postseason, they didn't get the job done. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, these guys, they just didn't play well enough as a team. They didn't do it. And that's how it was with the Yankees for a long time. Because that's another thing, right? A lot of people jump to George Steinbrenner. They're like, oh, that George Steinbrenner's not around. That's why if George was alive, everything would be better. That's not true. All right. A lot of problems came with George Steinbrenner. And you don't need George Steinbrenner. And I love, respect the guy. He was a winner. He wanted to win. He was phenomenal. If he was still here, he would not be okay with this. But you don't need. The truth is, he is gone. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And you don't need George Steinbrenner. You don't need George Steinbrenner to win. You don't need him to win. And in short, right, we were not saying this after 2019. We were not saying this after 2020. We were not ripping Brian Cashman and the way that the business is done that we don't see. The stuff we don't see, the stuff off the field. We were not blaming this. A lot of people outside of New York have this misconception that we as fans, right, just automatically, if we don't win, it's because of the general manager. That's not true. I feel like, and I'm not a very old baseball fan. I've never seen a championship. So I don't as a Yankee fan, I'm not sitting here expecting to win every single year. I've never seen a championship. And neither has anyone that I know, really, because I talk to a lot of younger fans as well. So, but we sit here and we react to what we see, and the way they've done business is not the way they should be doing business. And that's beyond, right, viewing it from George Steinbrenner's point of view. That's just the way the Yankees run business, the way that winning teams run businesses, like the Dodgers, the Braves, and the Astros do. The Yankees need to really examine the way they do business, because this year, and it's 1 year, we saw a lot from this team. A very old team, right? They're getting younger, all right, but and the pieces that they've added, right, around the team. Right, injuries, constantly blaming injuries, accountability in the clubhouse, that's something you can look at. And of course, the way analytics are used. I think there are a lot of problems with this team, and it's at least comforting to see that there is a bright future ahead, and that Hal Steinbrenner acknowledges these issues. It may start, though, and this is where I'll end, it might start with just having to take more responsibility, and as he is, and maybe not giving Brian Cashman this carte blanche that he has, this responsibility to take over everything. Because as good as I think of as good of a resume as he's had, and as great of a baseball mind as he has, he didn't do a good job with this team. Because this is what it's gotten steadily worse. I think the beginning of 2022 really clouded everyone's memory of or idea of what this team is. but and because if you take that away, then it's been significant. It's not significantly, but steadily worse every year, and they got to change fast. And we're gonna get into that.
I
I guess really quickly, right? The Mets.
No, we don't have that. Unfortunately, we don't have any time
my
for the
bad.
Mets. We'll go into that when we go down to the Yankees. We also don't have any time to really discuss the playoffs.
There's not much to say with the Mets anyway.
I
Come
know.
on.
If you want to check out what we said about the playoffs, you can check out last week's episode because we all went into our full predictions for that. But since we're running so little on time, we're going to jump into the Thursday night football prediction. Packers Lions, the poll in Instagram. Everyone was backing the Lions for some reason. We'll all go into our picks now. Colin, we'll start with you first. Who do you got? Green Bay, Detroit.
I think this is one of the best games this week. That's very rare
Yeah.
for Thursday night football, but I mean, Detroit swept them last year. I think Detroit wins again. Listen, I think that the Packers are a good football team. I like what I'm seeing out of Jordan Love, but I think that the Packers, I'm not really impressed with them being the Saints and the Bears. I mean, sure, they came back last week. That was a very good performance. I just think the Lions are the better football team. I'm going with Detroit here in a close one.
Chris, who you got?
I'm gonna pick Green Bay. I just think being at home, right? Some of the pieces they're getting back in general. Detroit did right there. One of their wins did come away. And they are a great team, right? Detroit, high on them. But I like this on a cold Thursday night in Lambeau. I'm gonna go with the Green Bay Packers.
I like that pick. I'm also back in the Green Bay Packers. Listen, the hopeful return, the hopeful season debut for Christian Watson will hopefully come tonight. I am really backing in to have a big time performance against this Lions secondary. The Packers did lose David Bakhtiari to IR. He's out for at least 4 games. But I think Jordan Love, this will be his first big statement game. Look for the Packers offense to be high flying all night long. Big player to watch for me will be Christian Watson, over 75 receiving yards, and I'm backing a touchdown from him. And unfortunately, guys, that's all the time we have for you this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at Into the Stands on Instagram. And of course, we're every Thursday at 5 p.m. But for Colin and Chris, I'm Robbie Basil saying so long. We'll see you guys next week. Goodbye, everybody.
We will have Mets talk eventually. I promise.
Oh,
you
yeah,
that.
for
I
sure.
promise you that. I'm sorry, Mets fans. I love you guys. We will talk Mets in the future.
See you guys next week.